Howdy, folks. We are going to get started real soon here. A little bit of a snafu with Jordan and I. He was having audio issues, and also we got our time zones crossed a little bit. So you may just have to be patient until Jordan can get back to his computer and get set up. But that doesn't mean we can't get started in the meantime. So thank you to those of you who have hopped on in a timely fashion: Bob and Carolina and Emma and Chris and Lincoln and Winifred. A great arising to you, Winifred. So the topic for this info session, and just very transparently here, there is absolutely nothing for sale. Okay. Nothing for sale here. We are just trying to provide education and information that hopefully will enable you, if interested, to help more buyers purchase a home this winter, this spring, and so on. But particularly, you know, some information that, if utilized or when utilized, can get you some activity during a time that for many is slower, at least in the colder climates like what we have here in central PA. So welcome, Jackie. Welcome, Sean. And Mike. Thanks for hopping on, Mike. I'm gonna promote you to panelist just so you can help if need be. Once again, for those hopping on, Jordan was having audio issues, and then also was having well, he and I got our time zones crossed. So he will be here momentarily. He will be here momentarily, and we'll dig into down payment assistance and how you can utilize down payment assistance, the idea of it in general, to create more conversations, to get you more potential clients, and to get even folks maybe that have been thinking, or maybe even were previously in the market, but for whatever reason have left the market, or put that their home buying hopes and dreams on hold. There have been some changes that have occurred over the last few months that have made down payment assistance a much more applicable tool. And if you missed yesterday's Wake Up Real Estate show, Jordan was on and we were talking about this. But this past summer, this past spring, last year, down payment assistance really was like it was almost like you were robbing Peter to pay Paul, because to get the down payment assistance, it costs so much in fees that it almost was a one-to-one wash. Well, things have changed where that is no longer the case, at least in the current market conditions. And so it becomes a tool that is actually useful and applicable. And in fact, and Jordan will, I'm sure, share a little bit more details on this, but he has a client right now who, in breaking down the numbers, they are purchasing a home, I think in Kansas. They are purchasing a home in what will end up being $13 out of pocket. $13 out of pocket. They are purchasing a home. Now, that is not the norm, right? And that is not a guarantee that we can help you or your client do the same. But it does illustrate what's possible, because when you have, for example, a client who qualifies on paper for a 3.5% down FHA. Okay, so let's say they qualify on paper for 3.5% down FHA, and we're able to partner them with one of the programs that we have right now. And let's say they were a fit for the 5% down DPA program that we have available. Okay, we have a 5% DPA. That means that not only can they, or would they be able to cover to the 3.5% down, okay, they'd have 1.5% remaining to help with closing costs and fees. On top of that, if we're able to negotiate with the seller to help with some closing costs, right? If we negotiate seller help, that means that theoretically, we could help them buy with virtually or very, very little out of pocket. Okay. Now, I say theoretically because, you may be thinking or wondering, well, my market is still crazy, super hot and multiple offers. And certainly that is the case. But what I would encourage you to do is find the opportunities that do exist where this may work. And here are some strategies for doing that. Okay. Here are some tactical strategies for how you can find properties to match up with this program and create a, what I would call play the role of transaction engineer. So in other words, waiting for the borrower to get qualified and then waiting to find the right property. You go out and find a property and find a program with our help that would fit and match. And then let's proactively present that to the market, to your database, etc., and transaction engineer, create transactions out of thin air, right? So here is an example. Let me pull it up first before I share my screen. Here is an example. This is an email I got yesterday in my market. Okay, so I'm in central Pennsylvania. That's where our local real estate team transacts. Our mortgage team, the mortgage company that we work with, NEXA Mortgage, is licensed in 48 out of 50 states. We're not licensed in Massachusetts or New York because of some difficulties in getting licensing there, not just with us, our company, just in general. It is very difficult to get your mortgage license as a broker in those two states. But we're licensed in 48, and then our team is licensed in some form or another in over 20 states. So, if we can't directly help you, we know or can find someone who can. So this is, let me pull this up here. This is an email that I got on a new construction home. If my computer wants to cooperate with me here. All right, so let me pop this open and share my screen. Okay, pop that open and share my screen. Share. Here we go. Okay, so this is an email that I got. Actually, let me just pull it up in here. I was waiting for it to open up fully, but good afternoon. I wanted to reach out as one of your clients viewed our listing. This home is a quick delivery, and we're offering up to $20,000 in closing cost assistance or options. So this property, this property would qualify for USDA financing, 100% down. I know that's not down payment assistance, which is the topic of today, but it would it's in an area that qualifies for USDA financing, okay? And it's in a price range where it still would qualify from an income perspective on the borrower's end, okay? Number one. Number two, it is in a price range and in an area, and because it's new, would absolutely qualify for FHA financing. And when you take it, I believe the price on it, let's just use round numbers. The price on it is $400,000. I think it's like $425,000, but just to keep it simple and easy. $400,000, they're offering $20,000 in closing cost assistance. $20,000 in closing cost assistance, which math tells me that's 5% seller help. Okay, so we've got FHA 96.5. Okay, then if we can qualify the client for 5% down DPA, and then the 5% seller help, we have more than enough to get that client into that home for really almost no out of pocket. Now, they may have to pay for the appraisal out of pocket, which we can get reimbursed for them. They would they would have to, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, they'd have to put down an earnest money deposit, which we would be able to get reimbursed or refunded back to them. But this is how you can play the role of transaction engineer. Okay. Now, what if you're in a market where there aren't these kind of opportunities. Okay. Well, number one, I would say, do you know if there are? Have you looked at what incentives and special financing and things of that nature that builders are offering? Okay. I would check that first and foremost. And number two, what I would tell you is alternatively, I would go and find properties that have been listed for, let's say, go into your MLS, pull up properties that have been listed for at least 60 days and have had a price reduction, or even better yet, multiple price reductions, and see if it would fit the model of what we're talking about here. Okay. So for example, you go and find, let's say you pick out one. You want to check, number one, make sure it's still actively on the market, right? Number two, I would want to verify the value of the property. Okay. Is it because it's way overpriced and there's no value to justify it? Is that why it's still on there? Or did they just start too high and now they've landed in a range that actually, the property is worth that? Okay. So just verifying that the value is there. And then I would probably reach out to the listing agent and try to judge the motivation, right? Hey, Susan, just reaching out about your listing on XYZ. I see it's been listed for a while. There's been multiple price reductions. Have you had offers that just didn't work out? Or, just ask some questions. And a lot of times they'll let you know what the level of motivation is. So if it checks off all those boxes, then you can get to work with us if you want. Or maybe you have a listing that's been sitting and you can't figure out what to do with it. Let's take a look and figure out how we can fit that into, whether it is proactively creating some marketing and creating some curiosity around around the property, teasing some special financing options, or doing things as simple as for example, that home that I had shared, that new construction home that's 400,000 but 20,000, promoting that and with the little tagline, ask me how you can buy this home with 0 down payment. And just using that to create conversations and so forth. Now, still waiting on Jordan. He's going to be here soon. And specifically why I want Jordan to hop in here. He's going to talk more nuts and bolts about some different down payment assistance options and programs. And number two, I want him to share a few stories that he was sharing with me yesterday about how he was able in the last week. Oh, here he is. Look at this. How Jordan was able in the last week to help clients drastically, or I'm trying to think of the way, was able to help clients with a variety of credit issues, let's say, or credit limitations, that he was, by looking at the problem from a creative angle, was able to get them pre-approved and qualified, and in some cases under contract. So Jordan, I've just been riffing here, just as a summary for those, depending on who got on here. I talked about number one, how to proactively find properties that may fit down payment assistance programs and some creative options as that, so you can play the role of transaction engineer. We talked about that. We talked about, I teed up the conversations that we had yesterday about credit. We talked about, how we've got some lenders that are offering up to 5% in down payment assistance. And when you combine that with FHA, 3.5% down, and you combine that with maybe negotiating with the seller, that's how you help a client like the one that you told me yesterday or over the weekend, that it looks like it's going to be purchasing for a whopping grand total of $13 out of pocket after being reimbursed for various costs. So maybe start there. Let's talk about the credit things. Soledad has a question that we'll get to in the chat. And folks, if you have questions or if you have scenarios that you would like us to dig into, please drop them here, because I find that oftentimes is the most valuable for everyone, like actual real world examples and scenarios of clients that you're trying to help or would like to help, and just haven't been able to figure it out. So Jordan, let's unpack some of those stories, because I think that'll get the gears turned.
Yeah. Well, first, can you hear me? Does
Yes,
it sound good?
loud and clear.
All right. I had to run.
And I did let everybody know what the problem was. One was a communication error between the two of us, and one was a technical error. So he's got
I had to
new
run
and
and go get a
improved
mic.
audio.
So
yeah, new and improved audio.
So yeah, I mean, so let me figure out how I want to start it off. So I would say a lot of lenders, in general, do not look at financing as a puzzle, right? They'll look at it as more of a black and white picture.
Right.
And that black and white picture is, okay, do they qualify? Do they have the credit score? What do they have? Right? What are they currently sitting with? Instead of looking at it from a picture of, okay, I have my 3 pillars. I know we talk about that a lot.
Refresh everybody on those. Just let's
3
do
pillars: assets, credit, down payment.
Yep.
Okay. Those are the 3 pillars that you need to buy a house. A lot of times you can be having 2 or missing 1, but as long as you have 2, you can buy a house. For example, if you have good credit, no assets, and good job history, income, then you could do a DPA, or so on and so forth, right? You need at least 2 of the pillars. So if we're missing, our goal is to achieve two of those pillars. What do we need to do to get there? Whether it's manipulating credit, whether it's paying down debt, whether it's what is going to make them fit in that box. And that's what we'll, a lot of times we'll do. I'll give you an example. Recently we boosted 2 clients. Okay. We had a very unique situation where someone was trying to buy a package of houses. Okay. One was, it's about 160 grand, and not a big deal at all. Not a big deal. I'm originally from Kansas, so sometimes I get really small Kansas deals, but $160,000 for 2 homes, essentially, right? Yep. And it was way underpriced because they were packaging together. The buyer that wanted to buy it wanted to do a blanket loan, but didn't have enough down payment. But he had a sister that was also an investor / they're wanting to get into investing together. So what I did was I split into 2 loans. Both of them did not have credit scores. So originally we were going to go with no credit score FHA loans, which I'm not going to dive too deep on here on those, but those are possible. You don't have to have a credit score to get an FHA loan. Yep. And but we found out his sister did not have a 12-month rent history, because she paid her sister, their other sister, cash for rent. So we had to figure out how to get their credit score in a situation to where we could buy both houses. So they just had a lack of credit. They were real young. So we just jumped on as an authorized user on a credit card. And after 3 weeks, he populated a 760, she populated a 739. That was denied by 2 other lenders, just based off the property. Okay. Yeah. They just said, nope, doesn't fit my box based off the property. They didn't give them any options. He's completely fine.
Is it fair to say that most lenders lose more, or most deals are lost just by simply by not looking at it the way you've described, of a puzzle, and how can you fit the pieces together to make it work?
I would say, instead of them going to another lender and it getting completed, it just doesn't close at all.
Yeah.
More or less. But that's where it brings into what we're talking about, DPA, right? Yeah. DPA, there's a lot of different DPA programs out there. There's a lot of grant programs out there. It's all about fitting people into a box, or restructuring them to get them into a home. Yeah. I like to specifically talk about a certain DPA program. I don't like to talk about statewide DPA programs, or down payment assistance programs, because that is very specific to one person, right? It's very specific to a certain area. There's always going to be a DPA in, a random county, or a grant in a random county in the middle of, Georgia, of some sort, that it could be fairly good if as long as they fit in that box. But the rest of Georgia is kind of out of luck, right? Doesn't really help that mass group of people, and there's tons and tons and tons and tons out there. So,
Yeah, I
at the
mean,
end,
like in my area, the county I live in, there is a grant program that you go and take a class and you can get X amount. Dauphin counties is a little different. Perry County to the north of me, I don't think they have one, or maybe it's York. So there is some of that, and you you should be educated about that. And in some cases, that might be the best option, but it's probably a small number, right? But if you don't, you need to be educated because they're already searching for that. So the fact that you can say, yes, that does exist, and also there might be some better options for you. Let's go and explore those first, and then see if we can't get you a better put you
it
into a
might
better
not even
situation.
be about a better option. It might be just a wider option, right?
Yeah.
That's really what I try to focus on when I'm looking for some for talk about the pillars, right? If I'm looking for
Yeah.
something to solve one of my pillars, which is a DPA program, um, I'm looking for something that has very wide options, aka that it doesn't have as very many restrictions. A lot of
Yeah.
grants have those, a lot of state, county specific. Not saying it doesn't work for a specific person. It does. It absolutely does, and it can absolutely help someone. But at the end of the day, if they go outside of that county, what if they find their dream home 2 miles out of it? What are we going to do then? I don't like to sell very, not sell, but teach about products that are very limited, right? I want something that has a wide range. I want you to be able to use it in California, and I want you to be able to use it in Kansas or in Pennsylvania or wherever it is.
Or not even that. Like for me, I have folks that they're not sure what county they want to live in,
Mhm.
right? And so things that would fit all of those boxes, and um, you know, these types of programs are a great way to create conversations, but what you don't want it to feel like is bait and switch, where it gets them into conversation and it's like, I'm sorry, you don't fit in this tiny, tiny little box. We can't help you, right? You want to make sure that you've got enough tools in your toolbox that you can help them and make good. Well, hey, I don't know that you'd fit for this one, but we do have this. Let's explore that as an option for you. So being able to pivot and make good on unique selling propositions, or even some of the things that I was talking about before Jordan went on. Just having little calls to action. Don't forget to ask me about how you can buy this home with zero down payment, or don't forget to ask about the special financing incentives we have available right now. Just being able to make good on that and actually help the client is obviously first and foremost. Sorry, continue. Or
Uh, so I want to take a little step back because you mentioned something there. I want to take a small step back and talk about, you know, DPAs in general and kind of the history in the last 12 months
yep.
and really why we're doing this webinar now. Go ahead.
I hit on that. Well, I hit on this briefly, but we have about double that, and you're going to explain it much better than I did. So why is this actually relevant now versus 12 months ago?
So when interest rates are on the rise that much and they're projecting that they're going to go down, a lot of times banks are always going to be set up to win, right? At the end of the day, they're not going to put themselves in a position where they're going to lose money. And so a lot of times they were forcing in the last 12 months, and this is with traditional programs, conventional as well, but it's even worse with DPAs. They were forcing buy downs, buying of the interest rate down. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I can give you a DPA program at 3.5%, but it's going to be 3.5%, 3.5% down, but it's going to be 8.25 with 3 points, attached to it. Well, that really defeats the purpose. Where interest rates are now on the they've dropped significantly. They're dropping every day. I mean, we get notifications, you and I, Josh, every single day
Yep.
from lenders repricing at a improved pricing. But really, where
I
it's
got
more
like
significant
4
now is
today.
that yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it really where it's more significant now than it has ever been is that you know the Fed is no longer raising interest rates, right? Inflation is leveling out, and there's an election coming up, right? In 2020, November 2024, or what, whenever it is, they were going to push interest rates down all the way up to that election. Okay. And banks know this. And so there is no longer charging of discount points. So DPAs are much more affordable to that homeowner again. Not that they weren't doable before, they were. I just would have to ask, I'd be like, hey, Josh, we're going to need to get $12,000 in concessions here, where it normally be 7 or 6, whatever it is.
It's just money. It was money that was just simply being lost. It was either extra money that the buyer had to provide or the seller was losing out. It's a much more winning proposition for both sides with what has happened in the last 12 months and what is seeming to happen for the next 12 months as well.
So with that being, not that we didn't market to it, because it is, if it was no other option for people, absolutely. We would tell them, hey, you'd have to get X amount on closing costs, and you could bring $13 to the table. But it was much more than what the norm is. Now it's more normal. DPAs are more affordable. Okay.
So I briefly talked about that 13. Can you, like, for those that are trying to rack their, like, how was that deal structured to make that happen for that client? Just for those that
So there's a couple of different ways to do it. So we talk about rolling in closing costs a lot. We don't really roll them in, right? At the end of the day, we offer a higher price. So I went and I took a transaction, and they were looking at a house. And anytime we have a transaction, I will go ahead and get the address, and I will go look up to see how reasonable, not that I'm a realtor by any means, but I will see how reasonable, because I don't want to state something that is completely unreasonable to achieve. This particular house, they just did a price cut of $10,000.
Right.
Like 2 weeks ago, a week ago. It's been on the market about 30 days. And so I suggested to my buyer, I was like, hey, instead of coming in at 200,000 or whatever it was, come in at 205 and ask for $5,000 in closing back. Right? They're not any money lost. They're, it's go ahead.
I talked about this before you got on. What Jordan was saying is, first of all, the first thing he did was, and he's not a realtor, so he's not doing a CMA, but just like, would this property support this value? Right. And there's lots of automated tools that you can use for that. We have tools on the lender side. You can use RPR. You can use Remind. You can very quickly, even if you're not comfortable comping it out or doing a CMA, whatever, like, you can very quickly get an idea.
Let me clarify. I did call the realtor before I presented that to the client. Okay. So it wasn't just a random value I pulled out of my hat, but I wanted to see if it's okay. Is it logical that this would even be accepted? Right. They originally had it at 210. So why not if you're offering 205 and if it's listed at 200? So I mentioned that they could roll in closing costs there, because still in this market, they could have gotten closing costs. Maybe, I don't know. But essentially, as long as closing costs are paid, we did a 5% down DPA program. Okay. It covered the 3.5%, then it covered additional.
When you said 5% down, you mean this DPA was giving them 5% in
They're
down
giving them
payment?
5%, 3.5% down went to the down payment. The rest, 1.5%, went to closing costs. So the only amount that we asked the difference from the seller was the difference in closing costs between what the down payment assistance wouldn't cover and what the actual closing costs were. I think they're around $3,000, somewhere around there. It's about $3,000, but then we got 5, and I used the extra 2 to buy down the rate. So
96.5% loan, 5% DPA, $5,000 for closing costs is how that was structured to help this client buy with very minimal dollars out of pocket.
Right now, they're set up at, it's around $13 to close. In reality, they're going to get their earnest money back, and they're going to get a credit for their appraisal. So they're really going to get their earnest and appraisal back. But I structure that a specific way. One is we always want to win all the way through, no matter what. I do a final numbers worksheet with every single client that we close, right? And we send out a final numbers of where they started and where they ended.
Yep.
A lot of lenders will go ahead and notate that they pay the appraisal out of pocket. If we're going to ask for seller concessions, might as well include it. Throw it in there. They'll get that money back. You'll be you'll go from a hero to another hero. Right? It's like, I'm only coming up with $13 as their assessment, and then all of a sudden they're coming up with negative $1,000. Yep. That's what I want more than anything. But at the end of the day, it just depends on your structure. But it also depends on, is it logical? That's a conversation that we're going to have, especially with DPAs. You got to work closely with your real estate agent or your lender and figure out what is the most logical offer to get your client into the home that they need. Because at the end of the day, we are gonna see a big influx of buyers in the next 12 months. I think appraised values are going to go up a little bit or stay stable, and they're most likely going to refinance that property anyway, right? So get in on a DPA now. Hopefully the value is worth a little more in the next 12 months, even if it's 2 or 3%. That's all we're looking for, right? Yep. It's not a whole lot. And then refinance that property and you drop your interest rate significantly.
Okay. So there's a question here. I'm going to give several tangible takeaways, things that those of you watching here, whether or not you decide to explore this with Jordan and I, but things you can do to get some business in your pipeline here as we close out the year. And then I want to open it up for Q&A, and we can even open the lines. We can bring you on, your camera if you want. We'll do whatever possible. So Soledad, I know Soledad's in California, and she said, would that apply to a home priced at 1.4?
So the program I mentioned before, so a little foreshadowing, is I don't like programs that have restrictions, right?
Yeah.
And this is exactly the reason, is a lot of times the California people are left out either to income limits or to price point limits. I would have to double check on over $1 million specifically, because usually there's a lot of price points either at $1 million or $2 million. But the program that we use is through a company called Click and Close. Okay, it's a wholesale lender that we're signed up with. There are no overlays at all. It is a straight FHA loan. There is a one overlay that I know of, and that's with they don't like IRS liens. They don't like payment plans on IRS. They want your IRS bills paid off. Okay. Which is not 9 times out of 10 people don't
usually not a deal breaker.
Yeah, it's usually not a deal breaker. But with that being said, they go straight to 55% loan to 55, 56% back end ratio as long as the system takes them. There are no income restrictions. The only restriction is that they're a first time home buyer. Okay. Not that we don't have programs that are for second or senior people. There's down payment assistance for senior people. There's all sorts of them. It just depends. But if they're a first time home buyer, if they haven't owned a home in the last 3 years, okay, that's what qualifies for first time home buyer. There would not be any restrictions besides the IRS. So I would say yes to that right now. I would want to double check the loan limit because it's so high. But if it was a standard 700,000-800,000, I wouldn't think it's an issue. The only other restriction you might run across is, depending on what county you're in, is FHA limits.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So as long as their FHA limit is that high, and most likely it will be, they would be okay.
So Soledad, I would recommend reach out to Jordan or I or both. I know you have both of our contact information. I'm not sure if this is like your listing specifically, or if it is you've got a client who's looking at a home that's in that price range, whatever that scenario is. I don't know, but we'd be happy to dig deeper on that. I'm throwing up this slide just as an easy way for folks, if you want to reach out to Jordan or I, and I'll explain what the QR codes are on here in a minute. But what I want to take a couple minutes and do is take this from the clouds and put it into the dirt. In other words, what can you do with this information that's up here for you now? What can you tangibly do today to turn this into client opportunities for you? So I want to give you several you don't have to do all of these, but I would at least do one of these. Number one, sit down and make a list of who in the last 6 to 12 months, 6 to 12 months, maybe 18, depending on how active you are in the business. Make a list of who you worked with on some level that should have bought a home but didn't. For whatever reason. They kept losing out. The interest rates priced them out. Whatever the reason was, doesn't matter. Don't judge that. Sit down and make that list. Who did you actively have looking at houses? Who did you make offers on? Who did you have an accepted offer that it fell out? The financing fell apart for whatever reason. Or maybe you didn't even get to either of those three, but they had been looking at houses, you had conversations, there was, you maybe even had some appointments scheduled, but you had to cancel them because they went under, whatever the case may be. Make a list, 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever you can come up with for that. And those are the people that you should follow up with by phone, text, or email, and just see where they're at and let them know there are some things that have changed in the market that may be to their advantage. Would you like to consider exploring them? Or are you still, if we could make the numbers work for you and we could find you a home that made sense, would you still be, interested in moving forward? Okay. That's number one. Number two, Mike, if you can grab the scripts that we shared this morning on the Wake Up Real Estate Show, there are text and email scripts, okay, that you can use and send to anyone in your database. Anyone in your database, okay? I think the lowest hanging fruit is the first step that I gave you, strategically looking at who were you already, on the road with, but it just didn't work out. If you don't have any of those, or if you want to add gasoline to the fire, use any or all of the scripts that Michael dropped a document in the chat with. And I know that these are working because Mike, and you can open your mic up if you want. Mike, you've been using these scripts at least today, maybe yesterday. Are we getting responses? Are we getting people interested? Do we have appointments set? How's that been going? And maybe Mike's not in a position to open his mic. I should have asked before that. But I know that they're working. Okay. So rest assured, and maybe Mike, when he's available, can open his line. Okay. So that's number two. So number one, who in the last 6, 12, 18 months had you been working with that should have bought a house but didn't for whatever reason? Don't judge the reason. Just make that list and then reach out to them. Number two, you can use any and all of the email and text scripts that are in the doc. They're specifically geared around the topic of today, down payment assistance. Okay. So, hey, Jordan, just curious, who do you know that would be interested in getting some down payment assistance to purchase a home this winter? Right.
My brother,
it's not them. Some people, it may be them. Jordan may say, well, actually, me. Right. But that's not what we're looking for. We're just trying to get their reticular activating system going. Who do they know? Who's been talking about buying a home at work or whatever, and just trying to get those conversations flowing, right? And number three, something I mentioned at the beginning that I'll reiterate again here. Go out in your MLS and proactively find properties that might fit this model. Find the builders that are offering closing costs incentives, because that can help offset the out-of-pocket. Go and find properties that, like Jordan had mentioned, they've been on the market for a little bit. They had a price reduction. The value's still there. Okay, the value's still there. Just take a second. Literally, if you punch in the property address to RPR, you'll have some idea if the value's there. And then if you need help with how we could, how that might look from a lender perspective, just reach out to myself or Jordan, and we could say, this would theoretically fit and would make sense, right? And then you can use that in marketing to create curiosity and to get conversations. So 3 tangible ways you can use down payment assistance to get yourself in conversations and put some people in the pipeline for yourself this winter. Jordan, go ahead.
It doesn't take a whole lot to run a payment and cash to close.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a whole lot, right? Don't send me 40 houses. I'm going to tell you right now, I have, a lot to do. But if you have a particular house that you're listing or something like that, you can, if you want to know, based off of a 660 credit score, I can give you all the info. And I could say, hey, this is what a closing cost worksheet would look like on that particular home.
And so we are recording this. I'm going to send the recording of this out to everyone was here live, as well as the resources. I'll get the link for the loan limits, the FHA loan limits by county. Now that is, I think the update to that is being released this week, Jordan.
Yeah, I would honestly wait about a week before you send that out. Well, I guess you could send the link out because they'll automatically update on the website.
The link should update, A, and B, they're only going up. Yeah. And my point in wanting to send that is it's an easy way for you to look. Will it, can you roughly estimate that this home will fit under the FHA guidelines? If it fits FHA guidelines, it means that the 3.5% down is at play, and it means that the 5% DPA is at play. We can't guarantee that the borrower is going to, that it'll work for a specific borrower, but theoretically, those things are in play, which means it may be an opportunity for you to use that as a way to create curiosity, get yourself in conversation with folks, and play the role of transaction engineer. Okay. And Mike mentioned just today, he's got 3 calls scheduled and sent the application link to 10 or so. So Rusty, are you licensed in all 50 states? And not, how do we work with you? So Rusty, NEXA Mortgage, who Jordan and I work with, underneath their umbrella, is licensed in 48 out of 50 states. Not licensed in New York, not licensed in Massachusetts, working on it, but they're just a big pain in the ass, very transparently. But as a company, we're licensed in the other 48. As our team and the members of that we work together, we can help directly in about 20 or so states.
22.
Yeah. Outside of those, we can still help potentially. It just wouldn't necessarily be directly us. So Rusty, I'm not sure what state you're in, but I would love to chat and see how we can help. Okay, now for what's on the screen here, obviously I've got Jordan and my contact information. The QR code top right is a link to my application. It's a place where a client, or maybe you're looking for some financing, you can go and create a free account, start an application there. Jordan and I both get notified, and we'll work to work with that information and see what programs are going to be best. Bottom left. If you are interested in learning how to add mortgage revenue to your real estate business in 2024 so that you can increase your revenue without having to sell more homes, so that you can position yourself ahead of the coming refi boom, which is going to happen at some point. And so you can, just have more stability of revenue in your business. And Susan Wise, I should have confirmed. I had a chat with her earlier about this program. We call it the Reload program. If you scan that QR code at the bottom left, you'll get taken to a short 7 or 8 minute video about the Reload program and an opportunity to express interest. And I'd be happy to chat with you. But basically, with that program, you become a dual licensed real estate agent and loan originator, and you get paid referral fees on the loans. We're not expecting you to actually originate the loans. We've got the systems and the tools in place for that, and ultimately we're going to help you hire someone that will do the origination and processing, etc. But if that's something you're interested in, check that out, and then I'd be happy to chat, or Jordan would be happy to chat and answer questions and see if it's a fit for you. Okay, it is not a fit for everyone. Okay, it will require work. You do have to get licensed. You have to take 20 hours. You have to pass a test. But for those that have a database, that have activity, or if you have a team, or if you have an independent brokerage and you're looking for a great additional revenue stream and the ability to provide better service and opportunity for more programs and products than what you probably have available to you, that may be worth considering. All of that said,
Couple
let's
questions.
see. What's that?
There's a couple questions.
Yeah. DPA in California or income limited, and if not income limited, to specific LMI census tracks, are your DPA programs outside of these restrictions?
Yes.
From Sean.
So what I mentioned before, I don't like. This is the problem with, you typically most states on most deep national DPA programs that they're limited based off census tract, and they're limited based off of, either, income limits or state, right? Like USDA is. The specific program that we're talking about today has no restrictions besides an IRS restriction. They can't have IRS bills out there they're making payments on. I personally used it. I've closed many loans with it already, and it's a great product. The interest rate are higher than a little bit higher, not too much. Okay, I don't want to think it's like we're going from 10% to from 7 to 10% or something like that, but they are a little bit higher in the terms of rate than necessarily a grant that's within that census tract. So we have both. So depending on the client and where it fits the way they fit, we might do a loan that is income limited if they fit in that box. But if they don't, we still have an option for them, and that's really what we mainly talked about here today.
Yep. Jackie, does every NEXA lender have access to the DPA program you spoke of? So at NEXA, all the LOs have access to over 200, over 220, maybe over 230 wholesale lenders and thousands of private and hard money lenders. So that's a long way to say yes.
Yeah. So yes, they do. Since he mentioned that we do have a lot of lenders, doesn't mean they use the product a lot, or that doesn't mean they necessarily know about it. That's why I mentioned the name. It is through click and close. You can meet, if you have a specific NEXA lender you're already working with, that's great. I'm not trying to pull you from them. This is more information, informational purposes more than anything. Give them a call, let them know about that lender. They're more than welcome to call me as well. I was a former director with NEXA for a long time. Most people know who I am at NEXA, but if they don't, they're more than welcome to call me, and I'm more than welcome to explain how to do the program and even walk them through the first couple deals if they need to. So
for those curious, the reason why some of you on here have known me for quite some time, I got licensed for several reasons on the loan origination side. Number one, was finding time and again, both the lenders that I was working with and many of the lenders that my team and my organization, my distributed organization at eXp Realty, we were losing out on clients and deals by not having the breadth, the depth of programs and products, the ability to help more clients. That was number one. Number two, obviously adding a revenue stream, and one that is fully, in lockstep and aligned with what we already do. And number three, like just the company, the way NEXA Mortgage is designed, is to help the individual LO win, and to help that LO, if they desire, to build an organization and a passive revenue stream, that, if they want to personally step away from production, that at some point that may be an opportunity for them, again, if they put in the work, etc. So it was the model, it was the opportunity to provide more value and better options, and help more clients, and it just so happens that not much happened with my license until I met Jordan, let's say, and so having the ability to do what I do best, and then partner that with other strengths is really what makes this work. I haven't actually like fully originated alone. I've played the role of rainmaker, We've got the systems and the teams in place to take it from there. So
I wouldn't dispute that. You've learned a lot.
I have.
Oh yeah,
I still got a lot to learn,
you
though.
know a lot more than the average person now. I mean, with this
Yes,
conversation with
absolutely.
us, so yeah.
So Soledad said the property I mentioned won't qualify. The property is in Alameda County. The FHA loan limit is 1.089 million. Any other programs for this type of property?
So I'm going to give you an idea. This is completely off topic of our DPA, but I'll give you an idea based off that. So no, there's not typically DPA programs that will exceed the county limits. FHA is going to be that's your hard stop. Your limit on FHA is going to be your hard stop on most DPA products, at least if they don't have census tract limits. That is. Now, with that being said, doesn't mean that you can't go conventional. Okay, you could possibly go conventional. Depending on what that loan limit is for that county, but I'm sure it's more. As well as you can do gifts of equity now from the seller. Okay, so depending on what you're going to be offering or what you're going to be offering that buyer per se, they can still do 0% down technically with a gift of equity. That isn't really a win for the seller necessarily, depending on what the purchase price is, if you're able to raise it or whatever it appraises at. But it is something that you could offer at 0% down, depending on how much in concessions or gifts of equity you want to give.
That loan limit is also going to increase. It's unlikely that it'll increase to 1.4, but it will.
It'll get pretty close.
Yeah, it could. Yeah,
could.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that for you, Soledad. Once again, I believe they're projected to be the updated loan limits are projected to be released this week or early next.
Conventional should be already out. So if you want to look, I can just Google it real quick.
While you're doing that, Anissa asked, what is the referral fee for dual agents? So you can get an idea if you scan the QR code at the bottom left. I walk through an illustration of what that can look like. Generally speaking, it starts at 50 bips.
What is 50 bips? Explain what is 50 bips.
So that's basically 0.5%. Okay, 0.5%. So if we were saying apples to apples on real estate, it's similar to
25.
Yeah, 20 to 25, 30% referral fee, depending on 25 because 200 bips. Yeah. So it's akin to a 25% referral fee. Now that said, Anissa, that is just where we start. And ultimately the model, and I had a great conversation with Susan, and she was already thinking this. Susan is someone that had previously been on the mortgage side of things, and she's getting licensed, and she's already got lined up who she has in mind to hire as her loan originator. And in that scenario, Susan then has control over what she's getting on the referral fees, right? It's whatever she negotiates with her loan originator that she's bringing on. And I don't mean to muddy the waters here, but the way NEXA is structured, if you recruit or you hire other mortgage folks, loan originators, or bring on other relos, there is you do have the opportunity to earn revenue share as well. So it can be pretty lucrative. And most importantly, we pride ourselves on offering and having the widest variety of products and programs and opportunities to help anyone who's looking to buy real estate in some way, shape, or form. Holly, if a client has IRS payments, can the DPA pay off the IRS debt?
No, they can't even pay it off at closing out of their own funds. They have to pay it before closing. They're very particular on that one. That's the one rule on that. But here's my thing is I'll take that all day compared to a census tract limit or certain limits that most traditional DPAs offer. Most traditional DPAs have maximum debt ratios of 36, 43%. This goes straight off AUS. It goes all the way up to 55 back end, 55, 56 back end, or 56.99 is the technical rule. And they don't have any other, real requirements besides that IRS payment. The IRS bill has to be paid off before closing. They don't want
And
anything.
that's a specific overlay to that lender, right?
Yeah, that's that one. Yeah, that's that one particular lender. Now, that doesn't mean if we do have an income eligibility limit or a census tract limit or a grant, there are other products out there that will allow IRS payments, allow other DPA products that would allow the IRS payment, but you're going to give and take a little bit, right? It's not going to, with this particular lender, it had the widest range of qualifying people for the most amount and for the most states, right?
This is a perfect illustration, though, of what Jordan was saying before. It's a puzzle, right? And so it may be that Holly has a particular client in mind, and this specific lender may not work for that client, but that doesn't mean that there aren't or there wouldn't be other great options, programs, products, etc., that could work for them. And working with a great mortgage professional, whether it's us or not, it's such a game changer for you as a real estate professional, because if you're out there and you're pounding the pavement, you're doing the work, and you're losing deals, even if you can save half of those deals by just being more creative problem solver on behalf of the clients, it is very lucrative for you as the real estate agent, and B, you're helping more clients, right? So Anissa says,
hey, yeah, if you don't ask, you don't know. I get it.
Yeah.
So ask, there's not a bad question at all.
Anissa, I'm currently licensed as a LO already and a realtor. Then we should definitely chat. Please, you can schedule a time with me at Josh15, JOSH15.com, or just text me at 717-571-0456. Let's chat and get you going. Where can I find the census tract limits for my area? That is a mouthful.
So they typically will use Fannie Mae's AMI, average median income. There's actually there's a link I'll drop in here. Fannie Mae's income lookup tool. There's actually a lookup tool that you can look up that will give it to you. A lot of them will have 80% is usually the norm. Okay, on most, not the one we're specifically talking about today. There isn't one. This is not needed for the product we're talking about today. But if you're talking about a specific, I don't know why it's not letting me copy this into the chat here. I don't know. I'm gonna put it. Josh, do you know how to copy a link and put it in the chat?
I don't know why it wouldn't be.
I don't know why it's not letting me do that. I'm gonna message it to you.
Yeah, okay. Sandra says, I missed it. Will you have a recording of it? Yes. So we're recording it. And I also set up Zoom so that it should be immediately, like on demand on Zoom, but we're also going to take the recording. We'll get it added to the Wake Up Real Estate YouTube channel and wakeup.realestate. And you can just message too. I'll be happy to get you the link. Let me find that. But anonymous attendee. So I'm going to say anonymous attendee. Please reach out to Jordan or I or both of us. But here's the scenario for everyone. My listing, and I'm sorry, this was in the Q&A and I missed it because I was looking in the chat. My seller's single family 3-bed 2-bath is listed for $550. Buyer is offering $520. My seller thinks $530 could work to avoid short sale. We are
stuck on it, sounds like.
Okay, yeah. Any creative ideas for that? I don't know.
Not the top of my head. I would have to think that one through. So we're trying to have a seller's net of 530, basically. I mean, if the money's not there, the money's not there. Typically, I mean, we're not gonna be able to avoid a make $10,000 come up out of thin air.
But I mean, I would say, have you had a very transparent conversation? I mean, it seems like 10,000, if the sellers just or the buyers understood. I mean, I guess it depends. Yeah, why is it not pasting the right link in there? That's not the right link.
You're talking about the link I sent you. It's long.
Maybe it's too long. That's why it won't post in there. Oh, here we go.
Anyway, if you Google Fannie Mae's AMI lookup tool, it'll take you right to it, where you put an address in, it'll give you the income, the medium income limits, and typically they're 80%. You'll see that it'll say 50, 80, 100 on it, and typically that's a number for most traditional DPAs. But that is not something
there we go. I got it. AMI-lookup-tool.fanniemae.com.
Yeah. I wouldn't worry about that too much, just because we do, this product doesn't meet, there are no income limits besides FHA standard, which is much, much higher than that. Yeah. Right. There's no.
Uriah, who I had a great chat with last week, it was great chatting with you, asked, is the 5% buyer assistance, the 5% DPA, does it have to be repayable, or is it okay?
They'll have a choice. They can either do a repayable option or a forgivable option. Obviously the repayable has a cheaper interest rate. I would recommend every single client do the repayable option right now. They're not going to be in that loan for much more than probably 12 months either way. Our goal would be almost like I wouldn't call it a rent to own situation because they own it, but what I would tell my clients to do right now is go with the repayable option, take the lower interest rate, and then put extra money on your mortgage every month, and then in 12 months refinance. Most likely in the market, we're going to have maybe a little bit of higher appraised value, but also if they're putting extra money on that, that's equity, right? It's money that's going to be applied to it. As long as their house appraises for the 3.5, they'll go into a traditional loan at that point from there on. So the forgivable option is 5 years. It forgives after 5 years.
Back to this listing scenario, anonymous attendee. I'm sorry, I don't have your name. Said the appraisal was 572 5 months ago. Okay. Now, what I would say then, I would go back to the buyer and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, let's do 545. Let's take 15,000 to buy down the rate, and your monthly payment for your buyers is going to be whatever. It could be less than what they have for. I'm sorry, the monthly payment may be less than them paying 520. I don't know that the numbers would work out exactly like that. I'm just trying to think creatively, like, how that could be maneuvered and presented, right? Because
the likelihood of buying down the rate 15 grand would have a lower payment. They would end up with a lower.
So there's price and then there's terms, and it's always a matter of how do you make those, how or what can you do to work either or both to have it be a win-win scenario for everyone involved. I don't know that would fix it, but at least if you at least are demonstrating that you're willing and able to think outside the box and do anything possible to help everybody win in this situation, I mean, at least you're doing everything possible for your client in that scenario, at least. Larry, can the assistance added be allowed for real estate commissions as part of? I'm not sure.
I think what he's asking is, can real estate commissions be gifted to the buyer for closing? The answer is yes. It's always been that way. You can gift down payment and
Larry, is that what you mean? In other words, are you saying, are you able to contribute part of your commission to the assistance, or do you mean can some of that 5% go to pay your commission in a scenario where the seller refuses to participate in any commission structuring? Is that maybe I'm go ahead, Jordan.
No, you can't. It's only closing costs and down payment. It wouldn't be any
But I
outside.
mean, pay that commissions. Yeah, but why? I don't know. I don't know if you're
So in a
theoretically
situation
saying that,
where
or
a
if you have a
seller won't cover
yeah,
the
because of
6%,
the
I'm assuming.
lawsuits that are going on. You know, I don't know if the value's there. I would
The
first,
commission's
I would
added to
say,
price, that would be fine. Yeah, the value's
yeah,
there. Mhm.
yeah. If the value's there and the seller's agreeing to 530, and you say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I know you don't want to pay our commissions. We're going to bump it up to 540. So you're not paying anything. And so we can get this, get this to the table for you. So if the commissions are added to the price, again, if the value's there, right? That's always the caveat. Okay, we have, I think we've sufficiently nailed this for now anyway. Had some great questions. So appreciate you all being patient as Jordan was working through audio technicalities and
Sorry.
and a time difference. We will get the replay out. We'll get the resources out. And we would love to chat with any of you who have a scenario, a client that we can help, or if you want to explore the reload program. Any and all of that is fair game. I'll throw the slide here one last time. And next week, I think we're probably going to dig into, if I can find it, we're probably going to dig into DSCR because for me, DSCR programs are another wonderful financing tool that you can use to proactively play the role of transaction engineer in what is, for many a slow market or a slow time of year. Finding properties that will pencil when it comes to a DSCR loan. And maybe, Jordan, what we should do is we should actually plan a little, letting you behind the curtains, everybody. And you and I maybe we'll grab a couple properties and run numbers for the analytical folks here of what that may look like, and find some properties that quote unquote pencil. And you know what? I'll probably also use those as
It's fine. We kind of do this off the cuff a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's okay. At least it's authentic.
Yeah, exactly. We're not trying to hide it. That's for sure. So we'd love to chat. Thanks for hanging out. We'll get the replay out ASAP. Jordan, appreciate you. Mike, thank you. And see you next week.